but we're going to follow up to make sure people have the resource. So if you speak to people afterwards and you think they would have benefited from the information, please let them know there's a recording and to reach out to us. Thank you for being here, and back to Lior.
Um, Thank you. So first, we're going to introduce Daniela Aptowitzer, who is the Director of Camper and Staff Wellness at Camp Northland. She's been a social worker in Toronto for over 20 years. She has a bachelor's of social work from the University of Calgary and a master's of social work from the University of Toronto. She worked at Jewish Family and Child for 15 years, serving the community, and currently works as a social worker at Montcrest. So I'd like to welcome Daniela.
Hi, everyone. So many familiar faces, which is lovely. So nice to see everyone. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into it because I know that's what everybody wants. It has been a long time since I have done a Zoom call and shared my screen and everything. So I hope it will work well. Appreciate everyone's patience. Okay, so there we go. So, right. So most people on here do know me, but thank you, Lior, for that little summary. So my goal tonight is to talk about the emotional piece to what we are experiencing now, understanding our emotions and giving some strategies. So we're going to go through some check-ins, some scenarios, and then we'll hit some really worthy and helpful strategies for all areas of life, but we'll focus it towards what's going on right now. And in terms of myself, the one thing that Lior did mention is that I've been at Northland since 2015. So it's been around 9 years that I've been there. My kids have grown up there. And I've had the pleasure of watching so many staff go from young campers to staff. And I'm so happy that I can try and be helpful to our staff and our families through having this conversation. So let's jump right into it. So the first thing we're going to do, hopefully, is and so this is my family, my dog, our new dog Bo. We love him. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to go to a Mentimeter. With a smaller crowd, we'll see how this works out, but we're going to make a word cloud. So if you can go to menti.com and put in this code, 7531 6638. What we're looking for are words about how you're feeling. And then it'll create a word cloud for us, which I will go to. So can you see this, Lior?
Yeah.
Okay. So as you guys are putting in your responses, we will start seeing the words come up.
Sorry, what was the code again?
I'll go right back to it. It's the code is 7531 6638. And the goal of this is for people who are on the call is to understand that we don't always know what we're feeling. And so taking time to think about it and identify it and label it is the first step in helping yourselves know what you need to do to take care of yourself. So we'll go, 10 responses. That's great because I'm not sure how many people are on the call, but I think these are representative of what we're seing. And the size, if the word is a larger size, like exhausted and anxious, that means more people have put in that word. So we're having a lot of characteristics that we would put under probably challenging or negative feelings. We have terrified, scared, angry, exhausted, anxious, overwhelmed, worried. We're going to talk about a lot of these things. The unknown, confused. It's nice to see that there's proud and in awe, because I think we all are experiencing that and seeing our community come together and the power of community. So this is, I think, just a really good check-in for understanding what people are feeling and what we're ourselves are feeling. So now you can see my Zoom again, my Google Slides, I'm hoping. So I think from the people that I've seen online, I don't know how many staff we have, but at this point I have a few slides to invite people to share with us what they are experiencing. So I'm going to go through them all and then allow anybody who wants to maybe jump in and share for a moment or two, which I know is never easy on a Zoom call, to please, you can raise your hand or just unmute and see and share. So I just want to go back. Okay, so a friend at school has shared their personal views and it opposes yours. Somebody who you've maybe been friends with for a long time, but when it comes, these types of things have never come up before. So you're looking at them through new eyes. Your grandparents' views upset you. I've come across several people, myself included, where older generations are talk about a lot of violence towards the other side, and that's not necessarily the same view that I have. And it can be difficult to speak to somebody who is older than you or who you respect, where you have opposing views on how to manage this very challenging issue that we have right now. Or for our university students, your school is not supportive. I know, we all know what's been happening at many of the schools, and whether it's not coming out with a strong statement of support or it's not taking action for things that are happening on campus. So there's a lot of things that can be difficult now. So I would turn it over to anyone on the call who might be interested in sharing an experience of how they're feeling. I don't know if we'll have people, but feel free. And it doesn't have to be school-based. It can be anything in your life. I can't see since I'm sharing, Lior, so if anybody is interested, please let me know.
If you're not getting anyone, Daniela,
Oh, there's one. I see Shane. Do you want to unmute yourself? Sorry, yeah.
Oh, that's
Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, hi everyone. How's it going? I'm Shane. I go to Western University. And what I've seen so far is that there's been a lot of like protests, whether it's pro like Palestinian or pro-Israeli, and I mean it's been kind of like I don't want to say scary, but when we did like a silent thing for Israel, we had a couple people come up to us and start like swearing at us and like being very like calling us crazy and saying how like their family was being murdered. And so it's kind of like scary in a way to see how many people there are against Judaism, even when they really might not know everything going on. But we try, and a lot of the people I know at Northland, because there's a big community at Western, try and stay out of all the craziness for the most part, while still supporting Israel, of course. But yeah.
Thanks, Shane. I think that's a really good example, because people aren't, you're not really sure how to manage these situations when you want to be vocal or you want to make an impact, but you also have to be mindful of your own safety and your mental health safety and all sorts of things. Was there anyone else who wanted to share?
I was just going to add, I've spoken to many students because I'm doing counseling at 9 campuses, and I can speak to a few themes that I'm hearing from students, if there's no other students that are able to share.
Sure.
So unfortunately, we're seeing some ostracization and what's the opposite of inclusion? Marginalization, exclusion of Jewish students from social situations. Students who were so comfortable in their living environments with non-Jewish students, let's just say, and suddenly they're stopping to talk when the Jewish student walks into the room, not inviting them out, a lot of really anti-Semitic stuff on social media, and then just seeing stuff on campus that's making them feel very unsafe, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Yael. I think it paints a picture, and it's sad because it's certainly not what we're wanting our community to feel, but I think it's just a sad state of humanity at this point. So we're going to look into some strategies and some things that have been challenging. So I think it's really hard to know what's okay in these situations. You know, like any situation that involves grief or difficulty, you don't always know what's right and what's okay. And I think, you know, always taking a respectful look and checking in with yourself. I'm the social worker, so I'm going to talk about checking in with yourself a lot. So, you know, some things that have come up are, is it okay to have fun? Is it okay to focus on other things and continue with celebrations? Is it okay to want to spend your time differently, perhaps, or donating your money or your time elsewhere, or focusing on something that is beneficial to a different group that you care about? And is it okay to say you don't want to hear it? And is it okay to post things on social media about that are not connected to the war in Israel or supporting our Jewish community? So in talking about guilt, because that's often related to the sense of whether you're doing something that's okay or not, we can have a lot of guilty feelings. Guilt is an interesting emotion because it's not a productive emotion. It's kind of a useless emotion. It doesn't do much other than destabilize and make you not feel great about what you're doing. So being mindful that guilt isn't going to help you in this situation. We are going to talk about what will help you. But if you're having large feelings of guilt, connecting with somebody and talking about it can help give you some perspective on how much it impacts you and affects you and destabilizes you, versus how productive it can be in helping you move forward. So it's not a productive emotion, but it's certainly an emotion that is present regardless in lots of different situations. So now in terms of the challenges that people are facing, we're seeing a lot of them, right? We know that social media is impacting so many people, whether it's the university students that are on this call, or it's younger people, or even older people like myself. My social media feed is full of people posting about the war in Israel. And sometimes it's too much. And we need to realize that we need a break from it. And it's okay to take a step back to self-preserve. Sometimes you just have too much stress in your life. Focusing on these things can be very distracting. And it creates feelings of helplessness for many people, because there's limits to what we can do, right? And this is going on, right? We're already at over a month of this happening. So in the beginning, people jumped forward, their time, their energy, their money, but that's not necessarily sustainable. So how do we feel when we're dealing with that? Our own safety concerns, like what Yael was mentioning about living arrangements and being on campus and being away from your supports and your family and feeling vulnerable in your community. The other thing is, it's very hard to manage your emotions when you're in a heightened state. So if there are triggers around your campus or triggers around your world, it can be hard to have the appropriate responses and, kind of follow your own individual plan of how you want to move forward. And of course, there's thinking about your future. I know as being a director at camp, how many of our staff spend time in Israel and how meaningful it is to them and want to do schooling there or work there or live there for times of their life. And that might change how you're feeling about your future, which can also be destabilizing and disappointing. So it's a huge amount of emotions to deal with at one time. And there's not really guidance out there on how to do it. So when we look at the guidance, we're going to talk about strategies. So the first strategy that I feel is very helpful is the understanding of, this is the cognitive behavioral therapy triangle. It's the connection between our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. So we have this part over here, which is just pretty, thoughts, feelings, behaviors. But then we have this larger chart over here that breaks down how it works. And the idea is that given that it's a triangle base, is that they're all connected, right? If we have a triangle and we take away one side of the triangle, the other two parts can't hold their shape. They're each codependent on the other side. So your thoughts, your feelings or emotions, and your behaviors are all connected. So if you think about, not wanting to get out of bed for class in the morning, and the thought is, oh, I can't do it. My bed is so warm and cozy and I love it so much. And the emotion is, it's an overwhelming day out there. I have a math exam or I have to meet with my TA and I'm not prepared. And then the behavior is kind of hunkering down into bed, groaning, throwing the covers over your head. That's the connection between those three areas. But if you get yourself out of bed the emotions change and the thinking changes. I can do this. I'm going to be able to do it. I'm feeling more hopeful. I'm going to go jump in the shower and everything's going to be okay, right? So it's the connection between the three. So if you're having these feelings about the war, about your peers, or about friends or professors or your school, whatever it might be, understanding and identifying your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, and changing one of those things. So maybe usually your thinking is the easiest to change if you're very proactive about it and aware of what your internal dialogue is. Then you might be able to change your other things. So if you want to have a close relationship with your grandparent, but every time you talk to your grandparent, it frustrates you because of the things that they may be saying or their feelings towards the war, then you might be able to change how you're thinking about it and understanding they're coming from a different place. I need to have some patience for this. I love them. And then your emotions will turn to more empathetic and your behaviors will be maybe not avoiding. So there's really a connection between these three things. This is a life skill that can be very helpful. I'm using it as an example for the war, but it's something that is extremely helpful across all areas of life. So if you get really good at it, it's something you can just do naturally, but it does take a lot of training and awareness of your own emotions to manage this. If there's any questions that come up as we're going, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we can see if there's any questions later on. I'm plugging somebody on here. You can follow them on Instagram. Their name is Kristen Neff. They are an advocate of self-compassion, that by being kind to yourself and compassionate to yourself, you can have more strength and resilience in managing the challenges in your life. So I think culturally, we're not very kind to ourselves. We're very hard on ourselves, that we should always be doing more, and you should be able to manage all the different things in your life, and school and friends and social life and romance and education and self-care and working out and being a good daughter and a good son and a good boyfriend or girlfriend, a grandchild, whatever it might be. There's a lot of pressure on us. And living, we may not be physically living through the war being in Canada, but our hearts are living through a war. So having compassion for yourself can be even more challenging. So it's an important piece to be kind to yourself. It'll allow you to have many years ahead of yourself with greater happiness. So understanding it as a source of the strength and resilience is a wonderful way of looking at it. And if you want to explore Kristen Neff online, you might get some ideas of how you can choose more self-kindness and greater mindfulness, and the importance of connecting with others through the lens of being kind to yourself. Now, this is one of my favorite things. I'm a bit of a broken record, which maybe our university students don't even know what that means because they're past record ages. But I talk about what's within our control a lot. Usually in my role at camp and in my role at school, I see a lot of people who come in and who are extremely frustrated. They feel helpless, they're anxious, and overwhelmed about situations. And when we talk about how they're dealing with it, the first thing that I often hear is, well, if the other person would just change or be more kind or tell me what they're feeling, whatever it might be. But the expectation is often on others to do things, and that leads to personal frustration. So if you're able to focus on what is within your control, which the only thing within your control is things related to yourself, your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own actions, like our triangle, then you are able to manage your expectations and be aware of what's going on, and therefore have a concerted effort in ways that are productive, as opposed to putting a lot of effort into an unproductive way of dealing with the situation. So can you control, sorry, Shane, for doing this, but you don't have to answer, but you can. Can you control when other people come up to you and start screaming at you when you're having a peaceful, quiet sit-in or whatever it was? You can't, but you can control your reaction to it, and you can control how much you allow them to upset you, and you can control what your next steps are. And for self-advocacy, which I think our friends who are going to be speaking later on will be touching on. But understanding, asking yourself, what am I in control of in this situation? The likelihood is that it will help you put into perspective very quickly what what is within your control and what is not. And if you focus what's in your control, that maybe as those people are, you know, yelling things at you, or there's an aggressive environment around you, you can remove yourself from that, and you can maybe write a letter to a soldier and get those emotions out in a productive way. So if you're thinking about what's within your control, it will automatically help you manage your expectations and reduce frustration and feeling of being overwhelmed and anxiety. So it's just a helpful life hack for our friends out there.
Daniela, it's Simon. Can I jump in for a second?
Yes, please.
So I just wanted to throw a couple other anecdotes out there, sort of on behalf of some other staff that weren't able to be here tonight, but I think it'll help when people are watching this through a recording or as we talk about it later, and maybe even to help some of our other speakers to think ahead for a second. Some other anecdotes that staff have shared with me from their campuses, just to put it out here in the conversation. And I threw it in the chat more to remind myself than anyone else. But so a few things that have come up. You know, I spoke, and I'll just leave it all anonymous. But you know, there was a staff member who came back from a break, and that staff member's roommates had removed the mezuzah from the door, unbeknownst to that staff member. So you know. So still has to live with those people, still has to deal with the emotions around that, still has to navigate that socially, emotionally, all of that. So that's, you know, one example. Another one was people being furious about letters. This happened on 2 campuses, you know, specifically of our staff that came to me for help. With the, you know, policy statements of student unions or the school, you know, some that we're all very familiar with, and not knowing who to turn to or what the steps are to deal with that and address it and to take action and to have their voice heard. That was another one. Very, let's say, controversial Free Palestine messages on signs in the hallways that Dons are supporting or not addressing in their residences. Another example was, you know, friends who are hanging out regularly, having wonderful relationships and good friendships, and then all of a sudden, October 7th, and social media feeds become full of all kinds of stuff that is almost seems diametrically opposed to their friendship, that got turned upside down overnight. So just throwing a few other examples out there to support sort of the thinking and dialogue that have come up to me from some of our staff.
Absolutely, that's great. Thank you, Simon. And I think those are all things that you have very little control when you're not there and someone takes down your mezuzah and you come back. You know, you can be very reactive, but you have to step back and think about what that's going to do for you. And these are all ideal situations, right? Not everybody can be the most resigned to their emotions and total control all the time. We're people and things strike a chord, and safety is a number one thing of that, right? And whether it's our, you know, the Jewish people as a whole feeling safe, or you and your residents feeling safe, or you being away, you know, away from your community in Toronto and at a small place at your school. So there's so many things that I can only imagine our students are going through at university, because it's kind of like no man's land, right? You're not with your parents, you're not quite a child, you're not, you know, fully in the adult world yet, and yet the expectations are that you manage all of these things. So I'm so happy to hear people have reached out to Simon, because he's such a wonderful resource, and that's what we're here for, as the camp. So you know, I hope if anyone does listen to this recording, that they spread the word. So these are all the strategies that I've put together. Almost the last slide I have is a video by Simon Sinek, who I'm a very big fan of. It was recorded during COVID, during isolation, and in the beginning. So in the beginning of the video, he talks about cutting his hair and stuff, because that was what everyone was doing during COVID. But this little video clip is focusing on optimism versus positivity, and that it can be very difficult to be optimistic in a situation like this. But you know, research shows the importance of optimism, the importance of gratitude, you know, positive reflection, self-compassion, talking to yourself with positivity and, sorry, not positivity, but with optimism. So in this video, there's a discussion between the difference between positivity and optimism, because it can be so challenging, that I thought it was worthwhile to show. So it's very short. It's like 2 minutes or something. So we're just going to watch that now. Hopefully there's no issues with volume.
Daniela, the volume I don't think is working.
Okay, I can hear it.
You have to share your audio with us when you share your screen.
When I share, share sound. Thank you. And I'll optimize for video clip. Let's try this one more time. Oh, I have to enter.
You have to share your screen again.
Okay, so hang on. So I'm just gonna, so I am screen share. Oh, okay, so close it. Okay, 1 second. All right, let's try this again.
Take out the old razor and buzz it.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, one of the things which I preach, as everybody knows, is about being optimistic. This is different from being positive, and it's definitely not naive. A lot of people think that optimism is naive. It's not. Optimism is not the denial of reality. And positivity is about saying things are good even when they're not. So like, everything's fine here, nothing to see here, everything's good, we're good. That's positivity. We don't need positivity right now. Optimism is the belief that the future is positive. We are going through a hard time now. Times are tough, they're rough, they're dark, but we will get through this together. That's what optimism sounds like. It is not the denial of what is. It is not pretending that things aren't good. It is simply the fundamental belief that there's a light at the end of the tunnel and we are heading towards that light. So be optimistic. We will get through this together. Take care of yourself. Take care of others. Talk to you soon.
So I have to say, I wasn't 100% sure if that was an appropriate video to show, because I think it's very hard to be optimistic. And I don't think anyone's walking around with a ton of positivity and saying everything's fantastic. But if we break it down and look at it more on an individual level, you know, when your parent asks you, how are you doing? And you say, yeah, I'm fine. I'm focusing on things. I think that's what we're talking about. You know, it's okay. It's okay to say that things aren't okay. And it's okay to seek out help. And I know our other speakers are going to be addressing those things. So my hope was to give strategies and that people—
Hey everyone,
sorry.
I would share.
Just want to go to the next slide. So I will make a point. Simon knows I'm not great about checking my camp email outside of camp times, but I will be checking it. That if anybody does want to reach out or needs any support, you can feel free. I'm here for our camp community and anyone else who needs it all year long. So please feel free to share it. Though there are some people on the call who have my number, you can text me, whatever is best for you. But these are difficult times, and we're here to help. So that's me. I'm going to stop sharing. Leora, I don't know if there's any questions or anything that's come up.
I don't see any questions, but if you have any, please put them in the chat. So I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Dan Panneton is the Director of Allyship and Community Engagement at Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Studies. Previously, he led the creation of the Government of Canada Anti-Racism Action Program, funded resource Hatopedia at the Newburger Holocaust Education Center. He speaks regularly on the issues related to Holocaust memory, online hate, anti-Semitism, and extremism. So welcome, Dan.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. And I think I just shared my screen correctly. Yes. All right. Yes. So today I'm going to be speaking about the kind of advocacy realm of the ongoing crisis that we're dealing with, and what information you should be aware of, and kind of what resources are available to you if something does happen on or off campus. So we're living in a moment of escalating anti-Semitism that's quantifiable and, in a more qualitative sense, very noticeable in our own social spheres. We're seeing hate crimes and online hate really escalate on a magnitude level online. And I'm sure many of you are experiencing in your own interpersonal lives incidents, comments that are making you uncomfortable, making you feel unsafe in your own space. So what we're going to do this evening is first we're going to unpack kind of what do we actually mean when we talk about anti-Semitism. We're going to talk about the distinction between hate-motivated incidents and hate crimes in Canada. And then we're going to talk about some strategies and resources that are available to you, both through nonprofits like the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center where I work, and perhaps on your own campus. So to begin with, what do we mean when we actually say anti-Semitism? It's, of course, a very broad and very old phenomenon. And the best definition that we have available to us as professionals is the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism. So I apologize for the very text-heavy slides for the next 2 slides, but it's important to really spell out kind of the breadth of what we're talking about. So in a nutshell, anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed towards Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, towards Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. So that's the kind of dictionary-ish definition, but how does it actually manifest in real life? So examples of anti-Semitism can include calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews, making dehumanizing or demonizing allegations about Jews, particularly concerning power or the influence of those, or harming those without power, accusing Jews of being responsible for real or imagined wrongdoings, denying the Holocaust, basically, or undermining the narratives, accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust. Sorry, that kind of point repeats itself twice there. Accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or to the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interests of their own nations, denying Jewish people the right to self-determination, applying double standards. You can read the rest of the slide, of course. There's a broad area of action and thought. So here at the Simon Wiesenthal Center, we often have people bring incidents when they arise to our attention, and then we can intervene on a case-by-case basis if we deem it appropriate. But there's often a lot of confusion about what is and actually isn't illegal in Canada regarding anti-Semitism and hate more broadly. So I thought it'd be important to spell out, what do we mean when we actually say hate crimes in Canada? What do we mean when we say hate-motivated incidents? And what are things that are hateful, but to use the phrase that's often thrown around, awful but lawful? So usually in journalistic coverage of incidents of hate, when you hear the words hate crime, they're not actually referring to the specific hate propaganda laws in the Criminal Code of Canada. What they're actually referring to are crimes or incidents with hate motivating factors. So this is something like criminal mischief, vandalism, assault. If someone is found guilty of these crimes, and it is deemed in the course of the trial that anti-Semitism or any other hatred was a motivating factor in that crime occurring, the judge can take that into consideration when sentencing. So they can get a longer sentence if it's deemed that, say, an assault on the subway had anti-Semitic motivations. When we actually talk about hate propaganda laws within the criminal code, there's actually 3 specific laws in question. There are sections 318, 319, 319.1, and 319.2. Basically advocating for genocide against an identifiable group, publicly inciting hatred, which includes condoning, downplaying, or denying the Holocaust, or the willful promotion of hatred. However, these laws are actually quite rarely applied because the the burden of proof for each of these crimes is quite severe. And in the case of sections 318 and 319.2, you actually require the direct consent of the Attorney General of the province to actually apply it. So usually when we talk about hate crimes, it's something bad that happened that is determined to have hate motivating factors. Unfortunately, not every police service in the country actually has dedicated hate units that you can appeal to. So unfortunately, particularly if you're in smaller municipalities or when you contact the police, they may not actually have units that are dedicated towards racially and religiously motivated hatreds. However, on the screen are the ones that we're currently aware of. And if you're in a rural area, there's also the RCMP has hate motivated, hate units that you can contact. So when things happen on campus, there's a couple of kind of do's and don'ts, which we consider to be best practices in many ways. One is keep in mind that you can appeal to law enforcement, particularly community security or the police, if there is an active threat. And this generally should be your first course of action if it seems like someone is going to be hurt. You should always report the incident to both campus authorities and also Jewish advocacy organizations. It's really important that an organization like my own receive the details of incidents, because even if we don't act upon a specific incident, getting the color and getting the nature of what has happened is very important for actually informing our advocacy efforts. Third is familiar yourself with relevant code of conduct policies. So often when you make appeals to authorities within your university, they may want to know, okay, so like something bad happened to you in residence and lecture. What do you want me to do? Like, so what, basically? And if you can actually cite in a specific document that each university has a different code of conduct, if you can actually cite out what is spelt out and what the consequences should be, that can often really bolster an argument and drive action on a negative incident. Document as much as you can. Evidence is really your friend here, because when things get down to they said, it unfortunately often falls apart because we can't actually prove something really negative that happened. So if posters have gone up that are really negative, photograph them, write down where and when you saw them, what context you saw them in. If you see things on social media, take screenshots, take notes of the account that you saw in case it might be deleted. Basically, the more fleshed out information that you can provide any authority that that's at hand is extremely helpful. And often you'll maybe faced with the question of, okay, so like, again, what do you want us to do? Advocate for remedial education and training. Education and training offered by organizations like my own and other advocacy orgs have actually been proven to be quite effective, particularly when we reach large bodies of people, at kind of informing people about the realities that the Jewish community faces. Because although anti-Semitic examples of anti-Semitism like the Holocaust are so important in our society, and we often use them as often a kind of the ultimate moral metaphor, at the same time, most people actually aren't all that aware of the realities of Jewish life or anti-Semitism on the ground. So this does provide learning opportunities for large groups of people. And then for just two don'ts, don't respond with hatred or violence. Obviously, violence goes without saying, but also make sure in your response, even if it's being driven with anger, don't attack groups, don't attack individuals, attack ideas. And then second matter is don't take matters into your own hands, which I know is very broad advice. So I'll use as a specific example. If you see hateful posters on campus, it may not be the best idea for you actually to go up and remove them yourself, because one, they may actually have permission to be there, and you may be putting yourself into a difficult situation with university authorities. And two, you may be putting yourself into a position of physical violence. An anecdote that I often use to illustrate this is, while I was an undergraduate student at Queen's University, I once saw a neo-Nazi poster that went up that was spreading the white genocide conspiracy theory. And so I went and I tore it down, and it turned out there was actually a razor blade hidden behind the poster, which cut one of my fingers pretty badly. So minor wound, but that's an illustrative anecdote to kind of show that it's not always safe to actually put yourself in that situation. So how do you report incidents when they arise to advocacy organizations? Well, when it comes to my own org, the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center, you can either go to the link that's currently on your screen, which will take you to an incident report form in which you can give attachments, descriptions, and contact information, which we will then evaluate and get back to promptly. or you can contact us directly at advocacy@fswc.ca. I recognize that as students, a lot of your life is being lived on social media right now, and that's also where a lot of the anti-Semitism that you're encountering is. So I thought I would give a bit of advice about both the importance of engaging and disengaging with this subject on social media. So the number one thing that you should keep in mind at all times when engaging with the subject is personal safety. If there's something that's like really truly ugly happening that seems to be targeted either at a group you're associated with or with you personally, it's often not worth it to respond, because that only provides fuel to the fire, so to speak. Don't share personal information. There's often, when you're responding to hateful rhetoric, the impulse to maybe provide personal anecdotes or kind of a story where like, oh, well, when I went to this high school, this happened. That's a bad idea. Don't give up any aspect of your life, because unfortunately that can often both provide research points and points of attack. And avoid directly sharing hate. When you kind of work in the anti-racist space, when you kind of research anti-Semitism online, you often have the urge to kind of show people what you've seen, to show just how bad what you're seeing is. But that can actually often further do damage. Both the people who follow you, who may not be signing up for that content, who are then being now exposed to further hate material, and you're actually extending the reach of the material, which was probably produced for as many eyes to see it as possible in the first place. So sharing hate in kind of engaging with hateful material is usually a bad idea. Picking your battles. Some accounts just aren't worth the time. Often you can tell this usually within a couple of like tweets or social media or posts, kind of who you're dealing with. Is this a very combative individual? Is this someone with either a tiny following or a really big following that might be not worth engaging with? This is very contextual advice, but a lot of these fights, just it's not worth touching that account. Considering what questions or what kind of tussles are worth engaging with, which may have productive outcomes. Sometimes getting into an online fight feels good, even if you like win the fight and you're right, and that feels good. It's not ultimately productive, and you may actually have done damage to your own side. So kind of weighing what is the possible outcome of my engagement and where could this go is always really important. And considering, do you have allies in this situation? It can be brave being the one person wading into, say, a 30-person group and making your point. But at the same time, it can also be foolhardy, and it can create situations where you end up looking foolish, where that produces propaganda for the other side, as it were. Basically making sure that there are maybe institutions or people who have your back in a situation is an important consideration. And then your own personal due diligence. It's really important to make sure you have your facts straight, particularly when engaging with the ongoing conflict, because unfortunately a lot of people are operating with either propaganda talking points or just like things that aren't true, and that's ultimately harming the truth of the matter and the side that you may be on. So making sure that your facts aren't straight, because ultimately if you're proven wrong on a certain little fact, that could ultimately be used to discredit your entire worldview, is an important thing to be wary of. This ties back to avoid directly sharing hate, but being careful with what you share. It's really important to be careful about sharing dis or misinformation, even if it's in a like, look at this terrible stuff kind of way. And sometimes silence is the best option. If you're not really sure before diving into what's one of the most sensitive political questions of our time, just don't engage if you don't know. And these are some broad kind of advocacy tips applicable to many situations, but not all. When you're kind of trying to make common ground with someone who you may have a disagreement with, really emphasize humanity, values, and the impact that the negative aspects of their position may be having on you and your community. Avoiding whataboutism is really important. It can be really easy to jump to if someone's like criticizing an issue and you feel that their attention on this issue is unjust or perverse, and saying like, well, you care about this, why don't you care about this? May sound right to you, but to the person doing the criticizing, it is not an effective way of engaging or addressing their concerns, and it ultimately feels like deflection. So when you kind of address controversies or issues, this is definitely an area to avoid. In your respective contexts, familiarize yourself with power structures. So at your own university, if something happens, recognize kind of what avenues you have at your disposal. How would you appeal to, say, a student union or a kind of like student justice body versus the leadership of the university versus the board itself? Or if you have an office like a Hillel on campus, how can they perhaps connect you to higher offices that may have more ability? So familiarizing yourself with what avenues you have at your disposal is very important. Avoiding in-person confrontations. This is both because you may be putting yourself in a physically unsafe position, but then also we're living in the era of camera phones and moments going viral very, very quickly on social media. And unfortunately, this is a very effective propaganda strategy that people have weaponized their phones and social media into quite well. So being aware kind of if there's something public happening, there may be an element of incitement happening in the hope that they get a viral moment is something to just keep in mind. Being really careful of the broken telephone. So we've been getting a ton of reports at FSWC, and a large part of our time has been fact checking, basically what comes through to us. And unfortunately, we find that something that a student told their mom, who told their friend, who told their husband, who told his friend, who reported it to us, has gained a lot of additional facts and angles to it. So yeah, question kind of like, okay, so what I'm hearing, where am I hearing it from? How many degrees of separation is it from the original source is something important to keep in mind, a healthy degree of skepticism. And then two things just that you can personally do. It's important to form conversation and mutual support groups with people who perhaps you don't agree with on all issues, but you do have common values and points of agreement, that you can just talk about these issues, because we are living through very difficult times and it's important to have these social support structures in place. And if you personally are feeling okay, like generally, like of course it's a tense time, but you're generally day-to-day okay, maybe I did try and identify aspects of your community or aspects of your immediate milieu that may need support and reach out and ask what sort of support you can provide. So I'll leave you with a couple of resources which may help you in your current moment. The Anti-Defamation League has a helpful toolkit called Think, Plan, Act regarding anti-Semitism on campus. Of course, it's referring to an American context and a pre-October 7th context, but a lot of it does hold up. Two resources that are useful for kind of identifying signs of hatred, particularly concerning the far right, but also across the political spectrum, is the American Jewish Committee has a Translate Hate Glossary, and the United Jewish Appeal has Hatepedia. I referred at the start of my presentation to the IRA working definition of anti-Semitism, which can be found on their website. And then an article that may be interesting, which was released earlier this year, was by Dr. Yael Cooper, who is a member of the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Toronto, who is also engaged with anti-racism and anti-Semitism advocacy work within the faculty. And she unfortunately had a very rough time, which was then written up into an article titled Reflections on Addressing Anti-Semitism in the Canadian Faculty of Medicine, which is available for free online, which I would recommend anyone watching to go read, because it does contain very important insights about how what we've seen since October 7th didn't start there. It definitely has roots in our recent history. And so that's a very important kind of aspect for the due diligence that I referred to. With that is the time that I had for you this evening, and I thank you very much for the invitation and your attention.
Thank you, Dan, so much. That was very helpful and very informative. I learned a lot, even having working there before. I feel like I've learned some new things, so that's great. Thank you. Okay. Is there any questions before I move on?
I actually had a quick question.
Sure.
So first of all, thank you. That was amazing and so informative. My question is this, all of us have our own social media echo chambers where, if we post something, we're posting it to, typically a lot of people who are all, just feeling validated by what we may post. Whereas, sometimes, we're in a group where 99% of the people in that group are not feeling the same, or they're either neutral or not involved or disconnected from the way we see everything as the Jewish community. And so when I look at sort of the tips and tricks of social media, sometimes I wonder if we're actually better off posting, in those groups, but then it starts to engage. But it's sort of like, if you don't do that, then how do we educate? Or is the suggestion that it's not even worth educating others through social media?
Yeah, I definitely don't want to discourage kind of participation in the public sphere in whatever shape that's taking. So it is important to advocate kind of in spaces like this. I guess a lot of it is just, if you're going to do so, recognizing what you're doing, because often it's very easy when you're on social media, just fire something off. You're in your living room, very comfortable, and not recognizing that you're actually speaking to an auditorium with 200 people in it. So recognizing that if you're going to engage, you're engaging, you're getting into it, and that there's maybe blowback. But I want to recognize definitely the importance of speaking out in those spaces, because even if you're getting wailed on by the audience, there's probably some people who are being quiet, who are listening to what's being said. And that's always an important factor.
Thank you so much. Okay, with that, I'm going to invite our last presentation. So Yael Greenwood is a registered psychotherapist, supervised practice with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Western University, a graduate level diploma in art therapy from Toronto Art Therapy Institute, and a master's in counseling psychology from Athabasca University. Elle did her counseling internship at the Student Counseling and Development Center at York University, has extensive experience in both adolescent mental health and providing counseling to 18 to 30-year-olds demographic and college university students in particular. So please welcome Yael Greenwood from Hillel, Ontario.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that about me. I should give just a quick disclosure. I'm relatively new to Hillel. I was hired in August, so August, September, October, November. I'm at about 3.5 months, and I was hired as the wellness professional and therapist, which means that I am seeing students for individual counseling, and I'm also overseeing the wellness programs at our 9 campuses. And I should add that Hillel, Ontario is the umbrella for the Hillel chapters. We're one big chapter really, but at Queen's, York, U of T, Toronto Metropolitan University, Guelph, McMaster, Laurier, Waterloo, which are together as one group, and Western. So 9 campuses. It's a lot. A huge population of students in our community, but we also have an intern, and we're really hoping that this program is going to grow. I do not have a what do you call it? An audio, video presentation. I'm just going to speak. I hope that's okay. But I really just wanted to share a little bit of information about our counseling program, because I know that there's a lot of staff out there who are at these universities and who might not know that this is available to them/you. And I also want to add that we're not just there for students on these 9 particular campuses, but we're also talking about the colleges that are affiliated. So for example, students at Seneca can come for counseling and or attend Hillel events at York. Similarly, and that's all the colleges, by the way, in Toronto, similarly for Fanshawe in London, etc. We don't want to be leaving anybody out. So why is Hillel providing this service? I have a little bit of a Q&A in front of me that I used before, and I'm just going to sort of refer to it. But the basic idea is that, as we all know, mental health needs have gone up since COVID. Add on to that the effects of social media, pressure on students at schools, and wait lists on at campus counseling centers have gone up. And this was recognized. There was somebody who really cared about this and provided a huge gift to UJA to fund my position. So I feel very fortunate about that. And I do think that the students are benefiting. Now, what kind of counseling is being offered? So each student on the campuses that I shared, and that includes also the colleges, is able to access up to 6 sessions with me and or our intern, who is incidentally a male and a master's student from Wurzweiler. I'm not supervising him because I'm a psychotherapist, but he has his own clinical supervisor who's a social worker. So we offer person-centered counseling, drawing from CBT, kind of the kind of stuff that Daniela was talking about, thoughts, feelings, behavior, all that. Some psychoeducation, drawing from neurobiology, what happens in the brain when students are experiencing anxiety, depression, that kind of thing, ADHD. And it's been asked what kind of challenges we can help with. The list is kind of not exhaustive or exhaustive. It will go on and on, but we're talking about mild to moderate kinds of things, including health anxiety, or all kinds of things in the anxiety group, but including health anxiety, social anxiety, school anxiety, generalized anxiety, mild obsessive compulsive disorder, anger management, low mood, low motivation, fear of the future, career guidance, life transitions. This is coming from a list. Family conflict, relationship challenges, grief and loss, ADHD, learning disabilities, challenges with fitting in, and racial discrimination. Obviously, we're adding what's going on right now with the conflict and anti-Semitism. We do not see students who have severe mental health challenges or are dealing with trauma, let's just say. We will support to get the right kind of support, because those are the kinds of things that we can't really address in 6 sessions. And we don't want to open up a wound and not be able to close it properly. However, we do have very good resource lists. And for students that we're not able to see for therapy, we will take a case management role and hold these students' hands from beginning to end until we can pass them off to the right person. The same goes, by the way, for situations where there are dual relationships. I am a parent of university and college students, and I know a lot of their friends and peers. I also have friends with kids in university and college. I would never do therapy with them, but I will take a case management role. Okay, so I talked about what I won't address in therapy. I started. So in that list would include also things like eating disorders, addictions, things like that. Who's eligible? We sort of said that already. That is students on all these campuses. That includes not just undergraduate students, but also post-grad and students in the professional schools. Is there a fee for this service? So there is a fee for this service. We're charging $100 per session plus HST. But we want to make sure that everybody knows that we will not turn anyone away for financial reasons. We do have a sliding scale, and if a student can only pay $5, then they will only pay $5. But the reason that we are charging is because we are hoping that the funds that we bring in will just help us to grow the program. And hopefully there will be 2 of me maybe in the next few years. So the fee is $100 per session. Every single university that I named does have an extended health plan that most students do pay into. So generally speaking, they can have this covered through their extended health in the situations where, or in the rare situation, I should say, where a student, for whatever reasons, has said no thank you to the extended health care coverage through university, and they don't want to talk to their parents because they have that right. They're of age to do things with full confidentiality. We will just work something out. We do offer a free 15-minute consultation, and we can always talk about that in that moment for any student that is feeling worried about that. Okay, so we talked about if it's covered through insurance. Where and when can I see the therapist? So most slots are virtual, and that is because I'm in Toronto and I'm seeing students all over the place. But I do see students in person at my U of T office, which I'm generally there Tuesdays and Thursdays, sometimes Wednesdays. So anyone from York, U of T, TMU, or even somebody who's home for, say, like reading week or is at Mac and just wants to take a go bus into the city, I will absolutely see in person. Otherwise, like I said, it was virtual. And generally, my sessions are Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. Our interns are a little bit more flexible. We don't have a wait list right now. We are very close to having a wait list. So generally, we're able to see students within a week and a half. It's possible that it might start to get a little bit longer, but I really am trying very hard to not let that happen. I do have collaborations with a few other organizations, including JAX, JFNCS, Regesh, where I can send students if they're going to end up waiting too long, because we don't want that to happen. I also have other practitioners in private practice that I can refer to as well. What else? In 1 second, I'm going to do a little bit of a Q&A for anything that I didn't cover. The last thing I just wanted to share for students who don't want their parents to know that they're in counseling, full confidentiality within the limits of confidentiality in Ontario, which I am going to assume most of you, because you work in camp, are aware of, but really that includes duty to report for the Children's Aid Society, risk of harm to self or other. If a student reports that a medical practitioner has been inappropriate, we do have to report to their college, but it keeps their name as person X. And in the extremely rare occasion of notes being subpoenaed. Other than that, fully confidential. So that's my little spiel on our counseling program. I should add that we're not running any groups per se right now, but there's a goal in the future that we will start to do some groups and provide some group support. But I am doing workshops. I've offered a whole bunch at York so far on different topics related to mental health and coping strategies and accommodations related to having LDs and ADHD, just as an example. And I've done a few therapeutic art programs at various schools. And I'm actually doing another one at, I think, TMU, or no, Kitchener-Waterloo in a few days. So there's a lot going on. Over and above that, I'm helping the students plan their wellness program. So any of you out there that are students and you're interested in participating in creating wellness programming, there's a really good opportunity there. And I think that's about it regarding the wellness program. Before I take any questions, if there are any, I know that Lior, you wanted me to talk about Hillel as well broadly. As I said before, I've only been there for 3.5 months, but I definitely have learned a lot in terms of the kind of programming that's offered on campus related to advocacy, being able to express in Jewish identity kind of initiatives and living a Jewish life, finding your people, which is, I think, one of the best parts of it, especially at a time like now. Amazing directors, amazing staff on each campus. Most have lovely, warm, welcoming spaces, inclusive of all different kinds of intersectionalities. And I'm not really sure what else to add because there's so much. If you look at the Hillel website and Instagram for each particular campus, they list all upcoming activities. I should add as well that if you want to get some mental health and coping kind of stuff online, there is a wellness Instagram account. It is Hillel Wellness. You'll find some stuff that I've written. And yeah. Does anyone have any questions? No, I'm worried that there's no one there.
No, we're here. Yeah.
Like, wait, did you turn it off? Have I been talking to nobody?
No, that was amazing. Lots of great information. So, like, if someone is on their campus and they're typically, they typically have been uninvolved in Jewish life on campus, are there sort of thin end of the wedge, easy points of entry? Like, what's the sort of suggested route for them to dip their toes in the water of connecting in this way?
Okay, so I would say that absolutely the best way to learn a little bit more about what's happening and maybe, as you're saying, dip your toes in, is to give a call to or send an email or an inquiry to the director at the particular chapter. They will invite you out for a coffee and do what they call a one-on-one and give you lots of information about what's going on each campus. I know that Lior, I learned recently that you are a staff at TMU, so it's possible Lior might even be able to answer these questions better than me. I've only been at the wellness programming. I haven't seen the other stuff, but oh my God, there is so much. There's literally stuff going on almost every single day at each house. One thing that I've learned that there's a ton of is food. And I think that the staff at these houses spend about as much time cooking as doing anything else. And I just had the best meal probably that I've had all week when I was up at Western. I did a therapeutic art group, and the staff made a tofu stir fry that was delicious. And they made it for everybody. So yeah, lots of food.
Thank you.
There's a Shabbaton coming up, I should add, in January, which I know is right now just for leadership, but it might be opened up soon to other students. If I have one more second, I will add that an initiative that we're starting and you will all be hearing about soon is programming for our neurodivergent community. That is something that we are getting started. And there's a few other subgroups that already exist, like Rainbow Jews, and there's also the opportunity for Jewish education through Jewish Family Life. Hopefully just use those letters right. So much that I almost wish I could go back to university and be at Western now instead of in the late 80s, because I didn't have any of this and I probably could have benefited from it.
Yeah, I think just speaking broadly here now, I think that a lot of our students, like our staff who are students, don't even realize how many resources are out there, and some are probably not even sure what the right questions to ask are at this time, or are to ask at this time. So I think being able to push out this type of information and resources is going to be incredibly valuable. Even sitting here, I already got a couple of notes to me just saying, hey, I couldn't make it tonight. Please send me whatever you have. And I think that there's going to be a huge demand for this information. And I actually think it's going to be incredibly helpful for so many people in our camp community and beyond. So I just want to extend a personal thanks to to the team here for getting together to share this information and really, in a way, together creating this resource that I think will continue to circulate and be incredibly valuable. So thank you.
I just added the way to get counseling. Sorry. I realized I didn't say that.
Perfect.
That's where you send an email to. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you everyone for joining. And I hope this was a very helpful presentation. If there's no other questions, then thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll be able to send this out to everyone who could benefit from this. So thank you everyone for a very informative and helpful evening.
Thank you.
Hi.
Adam, you want to stop the recording?